Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's baking blog. Today I'm going to make some no-knead bread in a loaf tin. A couple of weeks ago I made some very easy no-knead bread in a Dutch oven, and that turned out very well indeed. But I know that not everybody has a Dutch oven, and many more people probably have a loaf tin or a loaf pan. So I thought I would do this in that loaf pan just to show you that you can do it. You can actually do it on a baking tray as well, of course. And this should be a nice soft loaf, should rise quite nice and have a lovely crumb inside. So I'll go on to the ingredients. And for the ingredients I have 525 grams, which is 3.5 cups of flour. And for mine, I'm using 375 grams, 2.5 cups of white bread flour, and 150 grams, 1 cup of wholemeal flour or whole wheat flour. You could use any combination you want. You could use all white bread flour or all-purpose flour, but I wouldn't use all wholemeal flour because that will make the loaf far too heavy. So I'm using that combination, but if you just want to use the white flour, you can do that. Bread flour, plain flour, all-purpose flour will probably be okay. And I have also 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I also have here some everything but the bagel topping, which I put together and stored it in a jar a couple of months ago for something else. So I thought I would use some of that to go on the top before we put the dough into the oven. I have 400 millilitres of water, which I've divided into 2, and this is lukewarm water. Temperature is about 42 Celsius, 110 Fahrenheit. This is I've divided it in 2 because half of it will be used to activate the yeast. And I'm also going to use about 1 tablespoon of oil. The 400 millilitres, I should mention, is 1 2/3 cups in total. So I'm going to put the sugar into the water and stir it around, and then I'm going to sprinkle the yeast on the top like that, and it will sink down, I'm sure. And I'll give that a bit of a stir, and then I'm simply going to leave that until it activates. It will go foamy or frothy on the top, and that should take about 10 minutes. So once that's activated, I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step. As you can see, the yeast is foaming up nicely there, and so I'm going to simply put my flours and my salt into a larger bowl, and I'm just going to give those a mix around to get them combined a little bit. Like that. And then I'm going to pour in my water and the yeast mixture. I'll scrape that down just to get the extra yeast out. And then I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. You could use vegetable oil. And with my whisk here, you could use a wooden spoon or the handle of a wooden spoon. I'm just going to mix that until we get a nice shaggy dough with all the flour having been mixed with the wet ingredients, and that has come together quite nicely in less than 2 minutes really. And I'm going to put that into another bowl. I mixed it in this glass bowl just so that you could see it more easily, but I want it to more than double in size, and that would completely fill that glass bowl. So I transferred it into this larger bowl. I'm just going to pull in the extra little bits. And I'm going to cover that up with some plastic wrap, and I'm going to leave it to proof in a warm place for at least 6 hours. It should, I reckon, just about triple in size, and you should see lots of air bubbles appearing on the surface. And after 6 hours I'll come back and we'll go on to the next step, which is simply going to knock the gas out, shape it, put it in the loaf tin and proof it again before we bake it. So I'll be back in about 6 hours when this has tripled in size. So I've allowed the dough to proof for 6 hours, and it's bubbled up nicely, and it's more than tripled in size. This is what it looks like, and it's a little bit wobbly, as you can see. So I've floured my work surface, and I'm going to tip this out onto the work surface. Need to get rid of the gas that's in it. So I'm going to put some flour on the top as well, and pat it down like that to get rid of the gas. And then I'm going to fold it over like that, and again, and fold this side up as well like that, and turn it over. And that's all I'm going to do to it, really. So just for a moment, scrape that, and I have my loaf tin, which I'm going to spray with non-stick spray. You could just butter it, and I'm simply going to take the dough and put it into the loaf tin and press it down like that. And then I'm going to sprinkle over the top rather liberally. It doesn't matter if some of it falls off during baking and once it's finished. And I'm going to cover that. So I'm going to cover that and leave it to proof for another hour. And during that hour, maybe after 45 minutes, I will preheat my oven to 200 Celsius. That's 180 Celsius with a fan, 400 Fahrenheit. And this will be ready to go into the oven. So I'll come back and show it to you before I put it into the oven, so that you can see how it's risen. And then we'll put it into the oven and bake it. So it's been an hour now, and my dough has been proofing again, and the oven is preheated. So this is what the dough looks like now, and it has risen, and it's just about level here with the top of the pan. If I put my hand over, I can just feel that on the underside of my hand. It will rise up more, I hope, when it's in the oven. So I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for about 40 minutes. until the bottom, if I tap it, if I take it out of the tin and tap it, sounds hollow, and then it should reach about 99 Celsius, which I think is 210 Fahrenheit, something like that, internally if I test it with a thermometer. And once it reaches that, I'll take it out, and as soon as it comes out of the oven, I'm going to brush some butter over the top, and that's because I don't want the crust to be hard. You could actually bake it for longer and get a harder crust, but I don't want the crust hard. So I'll take it out, brush the butter over the top, and when it's cooled down, I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the no-knead bread for 40 minutes, and I tested it with a skewer, and the temperature was good. So I took it out of the oven and I've allowed it to cool down. It's still warm, but it's cooled down quite a bit, and I've sliced just a little bit to show you. So this is what it looks like, and as you can see, it has a nice texture to it, and I did brush the top with some butter to soften the crust just a little bit. So I'll have a taste of it. It does have a lovely texture, and I like that wholemeal aspect to it, which is just one out of 3.5 cups of flour, but it does give a nice flavour. And of course, you may have heard it's slight crunching. That was the seeds and such like on the from the everything but the bagel topping, which also adds flavour to it, of course. So this has been a very, very good loaf for me to make. Hasn't taken much effort at all, really, but it's going to be ideal for sandwiches. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this video. Sorry, that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link for it below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.